Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Trainers Forum presented by HRD Specialized Canine Training. I am Paul Martin, your host, and tonight our guest trainer is Greg Cole, and it is September 27th, 2020. I hope everyone can hear loud and clear. Also, just a quick few messages for everyone. If you have a question, please place it there in the chat box. From there, I will read that question and Greg and I will take turns answering those questions. And if you're over watching us on Facebook Live, I want to welcome you there as well. We've got Ellen McGarry, who is helping monitor that live feed and is going to make sure any questions that our Facebook audience has gets transferred over as well. So we still have a few more people coming in, but I wanted to let you all know that I am coming to you live from Interstate 270. I think that's right. I don't think we've hit 70 yet in Missouri. So I'm on my way out to Idaho for the next week. We'll be doing a class out there. So now that I think we've got most everybody in, let me go ahead and introduce our guest, Greg Cole with J-Max Canine Training Services. A lot of y'all might have met him along the way, either teaching with HRD Specialized Canine Training or also potentially teaching with the National Network of Canine Detection Services. I know some of y'all have seen him down at the Bay County Seminar in Florida, but Greg brings to us, 40-something years of working with detector dogs. He got a start there with the Air Force, and after he had done his commitment to the Air Force, he then moved back down to Florida and eventually found himself working for a sheriff's department and developed their canine program, primarily working narcotics and patrol, but also in there has had some trailing along with a little bit of EOD work. He spent some time over in Iraq working human remains detection dogs. And Greg and I've known each other 15, 16 years, it feels like. I think it's somewhere right in there, right, Greg?
That's about right, my friend.
So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Greg. And so as he walks through the slides, I will slip them to the next screen for you. So it's yours, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Welcome, everybody. I am finding remote learning to be much more stressful than teaching in person. I know that's probably the opposite of what most people have it, but never done it before, so I hope that everybody here, I'd like to welcome everybody here, and from wherever you guys are all at. I know I probably know a lot of you. If I don't know you, then welcome, and I hope that all of you get a lot out of this, and this can help you along your way in being successful in your endeavors of training your dog, particularly for our subject matter, for all subject matter, but particularly for our subject matter tonight. I hope you get something. You may see some things you're never used to, maybe a little different for you. I know that I started in law enforcement and military and law enforcement. That's what we do a lot of. That's what all these guys, I we have some of my guys on the air tonight that I've trained in law enforcement, etc. And they know that we do a lot of law enforcement vehicle searches. Whereas when I first got started with good old Paul Martin and Brad Dennis, who got to be kicking and streaming into this field, actually, they really got me going into this. And I found that when originally, about 20 years ago, there weren't a lot of people doing buildings or vehicles in the SAR world, the civilian SAR world. And that's changed dramatically. And you can go to the next slide, Paul. We go to the introductory slide number 2. And so when we get started on vehicle searches and looking at the only way I really do that is to kind of go back to the beginning, because there's so much that you need to accomplish before you start vehicle search. Search, an area search scenario where the dog is free to roam at long distances and get away from you and work at speed, because you're going to do most of that eventually off leash. I hope everybody starts everything on lead. That's where all training should begin, with obedience, and even our area searches and building searches and vehicle searches you're going to see. But the dog in an outdoor environment, in his favorite environment, most dogs like work those environments. Then you get into buildings and you start bringing that search into smaller realms. It's still pretty large, so they're still having a pretty good time. It gets a little more stressful there, and then you're bringing it down into vehicles now. It's much more stressful. Although it seems to be easier on us, we kind of work in reverse. The smaller the searches are a little easier on us, and then the larger searches are, a lot more demanding physically, and us using our brain to take in all that we're having to take in. So this all moving into vehicles, and assuming that all the criteria for success has been met, meaning that you've selected the right dog for you. Today, canine selection is so important. I'm hearing that the audio is kind of pretty easy for me to do that. So I've got my hearing aids in. Maybe I should have left them out. I could have been even louder. But so I'm assuming that the criteria has been met. You picked the right dog, understanding that canine selection is very important. And when you take in consideration what's best for you, keep in mind what kind of breed considerations you might determine are not only good for this field, but also that is good for you. Taking in consideration size and all the other things about the breed itself, and whether or not the breed is particularly adequate at working these search and rescue fields. You're going to be looking for the drives that are necessary, understanding that we are looking for prey drive and hunt drive, which you can't do anything without a lot of strong hunt and prey drive. I like dogs with a lot of good retrieve drive as well. I've seen a lot of dogs that don't have a lot of retrieve drive. They're very successful in these fields, but I find that retrieve drive makes a much stronger dog in the search and rescue field in general. And you have to make sure you take in mission considerations. That being said, Paul and I've had a lot of, back in the day, we could go out there and select a dog that we thought, well, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do area search. That's all. I'm not going to search buildings. I'm not going to search vehicles. And that was okay. We've kind of gotten away from that. Even the certifications and our testing requirements are requiring dogs that can do the full gamut, work all the full spectrum of the field, work in all the different venues. And Paul and I have talked about this a lot, and whether we're missing the boat and actually leaving some very good dogs out there because we've gotten away from accepting dogs that will do one or the other. But that's really another discussion to have, but something to keep in mind. You got to make sure that the dog is going to be adequate. Some dogs love to work it out. or target searching. It's just, and so you have to take those things in consideration. Is our dog going to be able to handle all the spectrum that we're looking for? Next slide, please, sir. Did you hear copy? Next slide, please, sir. If anybody's not hearing, please let Paul know through the computer there, and so we'll know if there's any problems. But the next slide covers canine. The next step I go to is canine development prior to target overexposure. I know that a lot of people start dogs on odor at a very, very young age, and all of you that know me know that I don't mind this, and I've done it. I'm not a proponent of starting them too young on target over. That's the correct slide. Because I do a lot of this prior to target overexposure with my puppy. Oftentimes, I'm not working with a puppy, I'm working with a young dog. Preferably, I get dogs that have no odor exposure. I like to do that myself. And because it's very important working through this pre-target odor exposure period and then target over period. And we'll get into that now. So one of the first things I want to look at is, before we even get into that, is a little bit about equipment concerns. When it comes to working detector dogs, I like to keep my equipment as light as possible. Light collars and light harnesses, which I like to do. I like to see a dog that's trained on both, starting with the collar, working to the harness, and then leads, light also, light leather, or the type of leads that I use are what would you call it, Paul? It's really not leather, but it's it's a
The biothane lead.
The biothane, yes, the biothane. Thanks, Matt, and glad that Matt could join us, one of my guys, and the biothane leads. They take so much abuse and so much weather. But anyway, I like leads in the 6 foot range. That's going to be your primary vehicle search lead. And then, of course, leads in the 10 foot range are nice to have and to work with. And you got to make sure that you understand in the pre-development process, leash handling skills are absolutely imperative to be a good dog handler, to learn to dance with your dog, and to be able to work the dog adequately in any areas, particularly vehicles. So leads 6 to 10 foot. Then the next thing I want to talk about is making sure that we start working on our environmental exposure and soundness issues. So now I take this young dog, the puppy or this younger dog, and I'm going to get him out in all those environments and all those places that I could possibly work anything, environments, all the outdoor environments. We're going to work urban environments, all the different terrain that we could possibly encounter. And then moving also working and doing our obedience. We start our basic obedience here. And we're going to start working our basic obedience in with all these play games. What I do with the play games is I find their favorite toy. Or I make different tugs out of shop towels, very clean, nice shop towels that I bought that are clean and sterile, and I keep them that way, and then I play with it. I make hundreds of them, and we roll them up, put strapping tape on each end. So I have one that's about 6 to 12 inches long, and now I've developed a nice retrieve system with the dog. And I'm throwing this toy and all these different effects. We're taking these walks and we're taking our little fun time and we're going out into these areas and these different environments, and we're throwing these things all into the woods and starting out easy on the nice easy surfaces and then working into higher grass and harder areas to actually for the dog to start penetrating in and receiving that. Then I'm doing a lot of playing with it and a lot of reward. It's all positive, staying very positive with the dog. A lot of love and play. That's what this is all about. And just making sure they're sound and they're happy in any environment they may encounter. And I know that most of you know how to do that, but that's very important system. What happens, the reason I bring these up is a lot of times when we start working in the STAR or any field in canine, a lot of people skip steps. People get in a hurry, and that's what I'm a bit advocate against. I even have a lot of trainers I've talked to, and I say, you're just getting in a hurry. Don't get in a hurry. The important thing is that we have a sound, solid, very hard driving, working dog when we get into the field so that dog is dependable wherever we take them. So when we're building our play and our retrieve systems and our reward systems, and we're working on basic obedience, which is all on leaf. Now the play is not. The reward system have to be. This can be throws and retrieve, but the basic obedience at this time is all on leaf. It's, you know, the basic sit down, stay, heel, return, etc. But it's all nice and on leaf. So then I've developed this very strong, I find what my dog loves the most, what tugs and toy games that he likes the most, and I keep on doing these things. And now I start moving into the exterior areas first. So I'm working outside areas, etc. Then I move into the buildings, and I do the same thing in buildings, all outside the buildings, all on top, all around and inside all the rooms, and every place I can throw these things. And play these games, and then I go to vehicles. And when I do this on vehicles, I'm just playing the game. I'm just getting the dog used to the cars. So you can see that I'm throwing them on top of the vehicle, under the vehicle, into the interior. So you can go to the next slide now, sir. So while he's doing that, so we're going to go to a slide, and slide E, the car on the left of your screen, that is horizontal there. We're going to, when we come around the vehicles for the first time, this young dog or this puppy, we want to make sure he's sound around these vehicles. So I'm going to do a little obedience around them. First, I'm going to play around them, and then I'm going to do a little obedience around them. I'm going to get them around a single car first, and then I'm going to get them around where I got 2 cars sitting out there, and then I'm going to add 3 or 4 more cars and start working and playing around all these cars and doing these tugs. And so the first throws I may not be all the way to the vehicle, maybe halfway. I may be standing 20 yards from the vehicle and throw it toward the vehicle, and little by little, where the dog just runs up to the vehicle and retrieves the toy, and I'll go in behind him and start playing a good tug of war game, so that I'm playing now right at the vehicle. And then I'm going, so in the first, you look at the vehicle, this first arrow on the left, the lower arrow facing like the tire, the left tire of the vehicle, I'm going to throw that one right up there and let it bounce up the tire, and I'm going to get a good retrieve game there. And then I'm going to move down the car to the right a little bit, and I'm going to throw the toy right up there next to the door and let it bounce off. And now we're having a little tug game there at the door area. And then I want to work down the vehicle to the other side. I'm just going to work around the vehicle like that. Like you see the arrow, making sure I play in the trunk area, down the opposite side, and then the front of the vehicle. And eventually I'm getting the dog to jump up onto the car. Help him. I'll put the toy up there, help him up. Nice and easy, making sure you work this so that the dog's happy doing it. And I'll get the dog where he just can retrieve it on a tug. And now I'm playing the game on top of the hood of the car. Same on top of the front. And eventually I've got the dog going right on top of the car to retrieve that tug toy. So now that dog doesn't care about it. That vehicle in there doesn't matter a bit. They'll play this game no matter what vehicle sit there. And of course you want to move on from cars. Later you'll move to the pickup truck. Play these same games on a pickup truck, using, of course, eventually into the back of the pickup truck, playing that game there. Then moving on to bigger vehicles such as buses and semi trucks, etc. So that you want to cover all the different vehicles that we may come across, including if you can find any kind of aircraft, which is sometimes hard for us. Start with the smaller ones and then make some friends at the airport. They got a lot of cargo. I hear a lot of people say, I can't get enough vehicles. When you're doing these first games, you only need one. You need one of each. You can play the game the same thing, and then eventually you want to go add multiple vehicles to get that dog around. But you check with your, car lots and these storage facilities. And junkyards are great, but at the same time, be cautious about junkyards, making sure that you've got someone that keeps them relatively clean, because they are very hazardous as far as safety goes. You can also look at tow companies are great. Thanks, Jason, and what have you. And then, of course, your own, not your own, I don't like my vehicle or your personal vehicle, but friends' vehicles. I mean, you're not going to let the dog scratch it all up, but then Then once you start getting them on the vehicle, it might. So a lot of times they're going to say, no, but you might find someone that don't have quite a car that collects so nicely. I don't care. Because they do what you got to do there. But you want to make sure you don't be lazy about it. Go out and find it. Then when I start, then I'm going to work to doing the same game on the interior. Once my dog is very sound, now this is over a period of several days to a couple of weeks that I'm working. I'm not going to get in a hurry. I'm developing a puppy or I'm developing a young dog. So this will take as much time as necessary until I've already done, remember, you've already done this outside of her. You've already done this building room. So he's probably getting pretty sound if you've done your selection right. You've got a nice dog. This is probably going to happen pretty quickly. So then I'm going to move to the interior of the vehicle on the right. It's up and down. So I'm going to make sure I play the games. Those same retrieve games, I'm going to play them where I throw it in just inside the door, right between the door and the entrance to the driver's seat, making sure I cover one into the door as well. So then when we go in, then my next throws, I'm going to make sure I throw it into the driver's seat itself. And then eventually I'm going to throw it up underneath the steering wheel, working across. My throws eventually will get into underneath of the center of the dash area, into the floorboard of the passenger side, and then into the passenger seat itself, and in between the car door and the passenger seat, another very important area, to make sure you have that pal disappear and drop into the dog will go in. Fetch these toys, and right now we're just playing that little game, and the toy, remember, doesn't have a run. Now I'm transitioning to the back seat. I'll toss one between the seats, then I'll cover those areas you see behind the seats and the floorboard, and then in the seat itself, and covering, and I'll even throw it in that area between the back window and the dash area above the back seat. Next slide, please.
Before we move to the next slide, you've got a question about what do you mean by sound? I've always heard it in relation to confirmation and being physically fit for confirmation.
Ask me again, please.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by sound?
I don't remember what I said about sound.
I think it was probably in regards to, you just want to make sure that the dog is comfortable and stable in that situation. And no, being sound as far as being comfortable in different environments and physically fit is part of it, but it's more a mental and emotional stability, environmentally sound.
That's exactly what I mean. That you're creating environmental soundness, and it's just an association with every place that the dogs can work. So the dog has to be accustomed to being and comfortable in all those environments. So the dog just needs to be. You need to understand that, and you keep working these things and you work. If you come to a spot where the dog's not comfortable, where the dog just does take it easy, we'll go look at an outdoor situation. So you're transitioning from cut grass to high, and the dog's doing great in the high grass. I go down a little trail where the woods, I'm going down the little trail along the woods, and I make my first throw just a couple feet into the thick tree, but the dog doesn't want to go. So you'll know he's not ready there. And we back up, and we keep on playing our game in the tall grass. But I'm going to make sure I try to find some tall grass that's close to a tree line. So now that the dog becomes comfortable with the big tall being nearby and all that stuff over them, and then eventually I can throw it right up to that tree line, and right up to a tree itself, right in next to the tree, right in behind the tree, and little by little by little I get the dog to drive into that environment. For instance, take that toy and I would throw it. Eventually, I'm throwing it. Once I get it, throwing it right up against the wall. Now I'm throwing it up into a foyer where the door may be. So it may be like 6 feet in that foyer where the door is. So I'm going to throw it just a couple feet in. Then I'll throw it right against the door eventually. Once the dog's comfortable with that, I've done it many times. Now I'm going to actually open the door and toss it right in the entrance door, right where the door, where the outdoor comes. And I'm going to make sure that's not a problem. He retrieves the retrieve. I play the game there. He even goes in and gets the brings it back, or I go in and play the game right there with him. And all this is once again positive. If he starts to show any negative to going in the opposed and to actually moving into that environment, then I know that that's as far as I can go at that particular time. So I'm going to keep working that until now I got a step or two inside. Once I get a step or two inside, I'm going to continue that a little deeper into that. And so now we can just move on from that. So the same thing exists with it. That's what we mean, the environmental soundness of the dog has to be assured of. So going back to where we were, now I'm going to move into canine development exposure to target odor. So now I'm going to further develop the dog. My dog is sound in that. We're good to go. Now I'm ready to expose the dog to target odor. So now and during all this, I've made sure my obedience is very sound. And now I'm not talking about I'm not talking about show obedience. I'm talking about working dog obedience. I do healing. I do sit stays, long stays, close in stays. I do close in work. I do far out work. I also make sure I start working. At this point, my dog should be ready to start working an emergency stop. You must have an emergency stop in your vehicle. So now while I start advancing my obedience, I begin doing imprinting drills. And I use throws. I use retrieve drill. So we're doing our retrieve drills. We're doing throws with those little towels, those little bug towels that we created hundreds and hundreds of. Now we've got new ones, and they're nice and clean, and now we've exposed them into odor. We've saturated them with cadaver odor. So now I have odor saturated in these towels, and now I'm going to do retrieve drills with them in the field. So once I've accomplished my retrieve and my dog, and now what I do is I'm moving into what I call multi-environment target drill. Now I'm playing that same game. I'm going back to that vehicle, and I'm doing those same play throws. I'm doing the same things in the outside area, in my building, working through my building. After I accomplish the outside area, then I'm doing this one step at a time. Now I'm starting to a building environment. Once I've accomplished the same kind of games and throws, and this will be pretty quick. The dog should already be like, hey, no problem. I've got all this. I love it. Now we've added the odor. Now what I'm doing is I'm continuing to imprint that odor. And now I've gone from my retrieve drill to our environmental target drills. The same drills, only using where we're going to actually work. Then eventually I get. If you go to check the slide 4, we'll have to come back, but please go to slide 4.
Greg, you've got a question. At this stage, what if a dog has aversion to odor?
If your dog has aversion to odor, then you need to go back in your training to start work your imprinting drills you can use and I'm going to get into some of that. We'll talk about using single target drills, so you can take them into make sure that your environment is serene. This is a quiet environment. Making sure your wind factors are correct. And so if I have an aversion to the odor, I'm going to first start I'm going to back up. I'm going to make sure I back up to where the dog is I'm doing short throw. I'm just taking it right out there, and I'll go with them. I'm going to go with the dog to it. They know it's okay, and keep working the dog till he starts accepting that odor. If the dog was never accepting of odor, we might have a dog that's good at something else and not whatever. I've seen that happen as well. Most of the time, when you have a strong dog that's made it through this far, I don't see many problems with aversion odor. But sometimes I have a dog that's just not his game, and after I try these different games that we're going to talk about, if he just won't be turned on by odor, but he's turned on by human odor, human scent on those towels, and maybe I got a dog that's not fit for life on. That's something to consider. I hope that helps answer the question. Making sure. I've had this question many times about we already covered the odorless targets, so now we've moved on to these same things on odor. I've had the question that, well, is this getting ahead of the game where the dog mouths the article and that has the trouble working the dog on where the dog won't learn a passive, for instance, a passive response. I've never had that problem ever, because what we're going to do eventually, we're going to drop the retrieve stuff totally, and we're going to teach a final response. And because once we get through our obedience and we've accomplished our obedience, sit means sit, down means down, stay means stay, no means no, and they know it and they respond to it. I've never had an issue where this creates a problem with the dog. So reason I went to, no, I need to go to slide number 4. I believe it's slide 4. Yeah, I need to go to slide 4.
Forward or backward?
Do I?
What way do I need to move the slide?
Can you move to slide 4 and then go back? One more, I believe. Can you get one more? Next one. Next one.
This one?
No, it has 2 cars on it. No, yeah, you're going to go back. You're going to go backward. Go back to slide 4. There you go. So once again, looking at on E, on the first vehicle, now I'm doing the same thing. I'm making my throws, but this is still a throw game. I haven't introduced the trained final response system yet. I'm still imprinting the dog. Now I just go and I play the same games I explained before, only with the odor on the retrieve arms, on the scented towels. And I work the outside. Now this is going to go pretty quickly. The dog is already we already have acquired our environmental soundness, our dog that's comfortable in all aspects of this vehicle, around it, on it, in it, and through it. So now we're simply doing the same game, having the same fun, all positive stuff, with the same type game that he's already come accustomed to. We can go back, please, to slide number. Right. Individual, double, and multiple times. And this is where I enter into, right before I enter, like the box to begin with, and then I move phones, bricks, setups, anything that you can think of. But I like the box with the hole in the top. However you make yours, I'm sure all of you are associated with meat drills. If not, we're going to get into that. But here's where I have a single target out in front of the dog. Now I'm still working odor. I'm assuring that imprinting is continued while I do this, introducing the trained final response, DFR. So I'm strengthening that final response. I'm strengthening the imprinting, and I'm introducing final response. And the reps are many. I had somebody say something about reps. Yes, we're going to use a lot of reps. By the time you're here, we've done hundreds of reps with the dog on our vehicle. But now I'm on a single target. So now I have this single box, and now nice grassy field if possible. I like a grassy environment so it contains my odor. I'm not going to use too large of an odor. I don't want to be overwhelming. I just want it to be strong enough to be be very pungent inside of that box. The grass helps absorb it. I will put that odor in there, let it soak in there for a while, 30 minutes to an hour at least, and then I'll bring my dog up. Later, I'm going to start decreasing the time in the box because I don't want it to be overwhelming. But at first, I'm making sure my imprinting is strong and I'm working train final response. So I do a single target drill, which I like to call the forewind. So I start in the downwind side. I'm probably essentially 5 yards back or less. I may be only a few feet, depending on how strong my dog is seeming and how good my dog wants to go out from me. I'm going to put the dog in the sit next to me, and I'm going to make sure he understands the target is in front of him. He's going to have a good visual. He's going to send the dog straight in. He's going to go in, come to the box, put his nose over the box. As soon as his nose comes over the target, I'm going to give him a very strong yes, and I'm going to now command my train final response. I may first just confirm with the throwing reward. I'm going to throw that towel right in. I'm going to throw my reward now. It's the favorite tub that doesn't have odor on it. I'm going to throw it right into the dog as soon as the nose touches over the top of the box. So now what I've done is award nose to the source. Once I've awarded nose to the source, the dog hits it. Now I start enforcing the sit or the down or whatever your final response is going to be, whether it's a stand, stare, a sit, or down, or what have you. So now I will move from the single target exercise. During the single target exercise, I simply slowly increase the distance from the target. Dog goes in, nose on target, final response, reward immediate. I follow the reward in, a lot of love and tug for, and a lot of love and tug for there as an award. And then we're going to repeat that several times. And later in the day, we're going to come back and do the same thing. Now, keep in mind, during the day, we're doing our obedience. We go and do some imprinting throws. And then I'm going to come in and do these single box drills. Once the dog is very sound on the downwind side, I can move to crosswind. So now I just simply move my dog in a crosswind to the left or to the right, working both crosswinds. And then once the dog is sound in that, this is over days and days. This may be, I may work this for a week. And now the dog, then I can bring the dog to the upwind side. And now when the dog hits the barrier where I'm too far away, you just go back and decrease your distance from target. You keep where the dog's comfortable and little by little expand that distance. The dog will get this pretty quickly and go out happily. I think you're going to find. Then once I'm finished with my single target drills, I'm going to continue to do the single target drill in the morning, and then the next target, I'm going to move him straight to a double target. So now I have 2 boxes out there in front of me. Box number 1 on the left, box 1 on the right, separated by about 6, 7, 8 yards. And I'm going to have both of them are going to be hot to begin with. And then eventually I'm going to be sending the dog out. The dog goes in, makes the fine. It does its final response. I'm absolutely getting that final response dialed in, where it never fails. Then I'm going to work the multiple targets. So now I have 3 targets in front of me, and the dog is fighting everyone. Now I can begin to introduce blanks. So the dog is very strong and going and checking each one of those boxes. Now I can introduce a blank, and I always do that to begin with, where the first box is hot on the far left. Then I've got a middle box that's blank, nothing's in it, and then the third box on the far right will be hot as well. And then eventually, over time, I'm going to start mixing that up. He may go to the blank box first, and then a hot box, etc. So on the double target, that's where I start, where both are hot. Then the first one's blank, and the second one's hot. I always end on the hot. Moving on to the next slide. I'm continuing my canine development on odor, and now I'm introducing speed drill. So this now I'm going to further develop my on and off skill. I'm going to start using those things boxes. But also I'm doing in these drills is I'm also developing search patterns. So when you started going out there and you were putting when you were throwing the toys to the cars and you were working around that car in sequence, or if you go and put a hide on the car, well, actually, when I go out there and put the hide on the car, I send the dog, it goes right to where it's at the time. So I'm developing those games back when we were doing that. And then the next one's down on the right, maybe by the tire and the rear tire. The dogs, and then the next one, you put one on the other side of the car, or you've tossed it over the car, and he's gone around the car to get it. Now you're actually already introduced pattern, movement and patterns. So now the dog starts understanding. Now, are we still with you? You still got me?
Yes.
I've lost connection.
No, yeah.
Is everybody else?
Yes, I'm here. I just muted me, so you're not having to compete with any background noise.
I'm afraid I got the. So now what I'm trying to do is so that we can get straight to vehicles. But this all is so important. It's just like the obedience is so important, and the on-lead skills of the handler are so important. So when I start doing these speed drills, now I'm taking my hammers on lead. So because we've been off lead, go out and go to the target box and sit or down or whatever the final is while we develop the final response. And now I'm going to reel it back in, and I'm going to do a little more difficult drills. And now I'm going on lead. I'm going to start working. I'm going to continue to solidify the final response. Continue solidifying that odor imprinting. Now I'm going to introduce patterns and multiple targets to search. So I start with straight line searches. It may be 4 boxes, and they're going to be in a straight line. The dog's downwind to begin with, and we're going to start. My starting point is a couple of yards. Position. But training is your search. You find your search command and you stay with that search command forever. That he hears it, and then there you go. It's always that. Box or the first blanks and the fourth box top we're done. And little by little I add extra bits and then eventually I'll start that search. And what I'll do is I go up the search, keeping the dog on the left hand side, keeping the target, my dog between me and the target, nice you in the lead, and I'm going to down the side. When he sees him button hook to the box, you see the alert responses. You're going to if you make sure you don't check the dog by tightening the lead. Make sure that you can at that time drop and get that final response. Also, eventually I'll do that same thing where I'm reversing my pattern. I'll go down one side of the box. I'll step in and drop an odor in while I'm back to turn into the first box. Now I made the turn the other end, and I'm just coming down the other side, just like it was a car, just like it was a fence line or whatever. Now I give the dog an opportunity to make a find in a hot box that's behind that we already passed, and now we come back. Working at the tall cones. I like that odor out of the top. I see that some people are having trouble with audio. I guess you'll be working on that. one call every.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
We're trying to get off, and hopefully the things will start clearing up audio-wise.
Okay. Also, let me know if maybe what I've done is move the phone even closer to me. Maybe that will be helpful. So, you skipped ahead on a thing there, but that's okay because now what I've done is we're on slide going to slide 4, I believe. No, we never. My own self here. Okay, yeah, and so we can go ahead and go to slide 5. Slide 5. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm behind. Okay, slide 6 we were at. And moving forward to slide. Paul, can you hit me on slide number 7?
What boxes or what's the title?
It's just keep go back to K19 development where we had the dog and the cone.
You're there.
Okay, online, but that look at slide 6. We're working the cones, and we're continuing. We're simply establishing, solidifying our final response and our imprinting the odor, but also developing that pattern. So now the dog working in that outside square. That's the correct one. So now the handler's on the right side of the dog has set the dog. In this situation, the dog's off lead. I do start all these at once again, and I use them on lead until the team is very sound working on lead, going left and right and reversing the whole 9 yards. And then we can go ahead and dog lead. Last nice response. Drill. That drill has only 4 targets in a large square. The targets, those are the points, the corners of the square, and it simply has 4 starts and nothing in between. And then of course other patterns we'll teach is the U pattern, and then we can set up things in the stagger Z where I have a target in front of me, then a target off to the left a few yards and up ahead, and then to the right. It's just a staggered pattern, and you run that pattern with your dog, and it's just a lot of fun, having a good time, but also the dog is developing more advanced pattern and working. Eventually, you'll see these dogs run these patterns all by themselves. When you start taking that dog off leash, these dogs are going to pattern themselves without you having to stay with them. It may be a little looser looking, but they'll be successful patterning without your help. Next slide, please. It's K19 movement called detailing. So this, when it's on the, I don't think that's the next slide. I'm sorry. Somehow I've gotten this out of. Okay, that's the next slide. Yes. Okay. So what I've done is I moved to K19 movement principles. So now we're actually going into. You can skip past that one. Go back to K19. Yeah, K9 movement principle. Ahead of you. I don't remember the slide number. I don't have that. I think it's 10. Doing some target drills, doing some speed drills, some obedience. So I'm continually solidifying the final response, continually pounding that imprinting of odor into that head. Now I'm going to move to outdoor area searches. Once I've accomplished the outdoor area searches, I'm going to move through this different class. Then I'm going to move into buildings. And once I've accomplished my building training, now my dog is moved into a more strenuous search environment for him or her, and that's vehicles. So now we can start talking about the fundamental principles of working vehicles. So in vehicle movement, team movement, our dog has already solidified everything that we needed to work on. We've covered all the ground. We're ready to have this dog work this vehicle. So we've already got the dog accustomed to where odor may be on this vehicle. So now we're going to pound that in. We're going to go to a single target vehicle, one vehicle in a field. Now I'm going to start with one vehicle and then have a second vehicle somewhere at a distance on that same field and another vehicle somewhere at a distance on that field. Hopefully I can accomplish to have at least 6 or 8 vehicles out there, but I don't want them that close together. I want them separated a ways apart. So what I'm going to do is talk about canine team movement to begin with. So my first canine team movement, I'm going to start the dog on my left side once again in the sit. But always start at the ready position. The ready position, having the dog on your left-hand side with the target vehicle in front of me at a slight angle. I always have my dog facing at a slight angle toward the front left-hand bumper of the vehicle, or the opposite side, which is the passenger rear of the vehicle, the trunk side on the passenger side. The difference would be which way is the wind going. I want to set this vehicle up where the wind is going. So let's say my vehicle is parked and it's in front of me and the wind is going toward the driver's door, going through the vehicle and out the other side. The reason for that is even on fines on the driver's side, when the dog starts, most dogs start too quickly, and they often will advance down the side of the vehicle before they engage their nose. So this gives them a chance to advance down and around the vehicle and then and maybe get in odor on the other side and work back to where the odor is, and or the handler will reverse that dog and bring them back around, and then they will get that opportunity to come across the odor that they probably detected now on the downwind side, of course. So looking at team movement principles, we choose a starting location either on the left front driver's side of the vehicle or the right rear corner passenger side of the vehicle. Set the dog and begin by giving the command, your search command that you have established and you always stay with, and allow the dog to move forward. We're moving now down the side of the vehicle. You're going to keep the dog by your side, between you and the target vehicle. Give the dog room. Don't pinch him into the vehicle. You don't want to check him. Now remember, you're on lead. You want to try to keep that 6-foot lead with a nice you in the lead, allowing the dog to work freely independent. You're not blocking the dog. You're not getting in front of the dog. You're not dictating the search. All you're doing is dictating the pattern. You're moving down the side of the vehicle with your dog, and they're dictating the search. They're in charge of the search, just like they would have been if they were outside or in building. So you make one complete pass around the vehicle, moving down around the back side of the trunk area, then back down the opposite side, and then make sure you complete the square or the vehicle by coming down the front of the vehicle. If the dog is not giving you anything yet, or you might have seen some behavior changes, but not he didn't commit to source or odor, then you're going to reverse that and move your dog back down the opposite direction. Always reverse, so you have 2 passes that you're complete. Once that dog's completed that second pass, if you haven't acquired odor, then you can move on. If you see anything, or if you think necessary, a third pass is acceptable, and that would be a detailed search. And we can go to the next slide, please. So on a detailed search, you've already conducted the search down the side of the vehicle, across the trunk, back down the opposite side, across the front. You've reversed that, and you're moving quickly. The dog's moving at pace. He's not running. you're not running with the dog, but you're not walking along there and creating the dog moving like a turtle. You're laying the dog. You're going to find that speed that's comfortable for you and the dog both to work with, especially that's comfortable the dog, how he works over. It does not take for a vehicle, it doesn't take that much for them to check those areas. Now I'm going to back up just a little. If you can go to the next page, but the detailing, the next page, next slide. Okay, go look at figure number A once again. So you're looking at figure A, the first car there. This is where we're going to start our search. And figure B, if you look at it, that's your line. If the wind is blowing directly into that one door, as you can see on the picture, you're going to start on the side that's down closest to the wind. That way the dog has one chance to get into odor. Then when he gets on the upper side, because he's probably moving really quickly, once again, he goes to the other side, he has a chance to work to odor. Now, what I'm going to do is explain to you how to pattern the vehicle with the odor. So my first vehicle out there in that field, that is out there by itself, I'm going to put my first odor. If you look at figure A, the first odor is going to be on the left front bumper on the driver's side. So when I start my dog, he only goes a few feet and he encounters the odor. It's going to be a good, a sizable odor that he can, it's the only odor on the car. We're always only going to use one odor on each car. Once again, you can't be lazy in acquiring these vehicles to search on. So the first odor is going to be right there at that front left bumper. Your dog's only going to take a few feet, bingo, he's going to detect that odor, get that final response, and give a very strong positive reward. Now I'm going to move up to another vehicle I have that's several yards away, and I'm going to have an odor on figure A there about the driver's side tire, front tire area. Then I'm going to move my dog again to another location, to another car. They're not too far away. I'll make sure it's working on each car. And I'm going to have an odor at the next mark, somewhere where the driver door crack is, there right before the mirror, where the first driver's door crack exists. There's going to be an odor there. Now that's probably going to be all I do, and I'm going to extend that reward. My dog finds it, give me a train of final response. Now I'm giving a big reward. I'm extending that reward for several minutes. I'm going to put the dog up. Once I've extended the, take a break. Later on, I'm going to field and I'm going to my next vehicle, and the next odor is going to be down the side of the car. Now the dog's having a chance to work a little further down the side of the car, but bingo, not too far, there by the corner somewhere in one of the driver's cracks where the door crack exists along that car. And then the next odor is going to be somewhere now from my narcotics. So that the next sort of cadaver dog could be and then the next one's going to be somewhere in the center of that rear of that vehicle where the trunk is. And the next vehicle, once again, each one's on an independent vehicle, is going to be on the back side corner of the Then once again, it's a break. I'm done. I'm probably done for the day. Probably going to finish there. Or if you think you're not going to take very long, they're short exercises. These are short and sweet and happy. If the dog's having difficulty, you need to back up to a step where he's confident in. Maybe you haven't solidified what you need to do before this. But by the time you get to vehicles, I would assume that all this is solidified pretty strongly. So if I'm going to continue, the next vehicle, once again, is going to be on the other side of the vehicle. And it's going to be around where the door is. So why not? That would take several vehicles, 3 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, out 13, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got 13 vehicles I need. We all know the requirement for how long it takes and how much that does learn all. Take a lip or something to wet my voice down. Go.
We should be good.
Okay. I hope everybody's comfortable where we are so far, and it's starting to come into place. Without having a vehicle and us standing there in front of it, it's a little bit more difficult to envision and picture. I know a lot of people aren't having too much of it. They've worked with me before, but I'm trying to make sure I make this as detailed as possible. So once again, we're going to work slowly, making sure the dog understands this and gets this patterning down. All this so far is on lead, and we're going to stay on lead. In figure C, you can see that I simply reverse the direction of what I'm working. So one pass around in figure B. In figure C, the second pass around. If you go to figure D, we'll discuss that real quickly. A lot of times your dog's going to, once again, going to be moving very quickly. Too fast to understand he's supposed to make the turn. He thinks once he's gone down the line, he or she thinks, I'm done. I can now go on to, I'm moving on from this. Let me get through this and I'll move on to the second pass. I don't understand. Somebody had a question about the second pass, and I'm trying to understand the question. But let me talk about figure D real quick, and we'll go back to that. On figure D, it's simply making you understand that on your first pass, once you've got the vehicle, so figure A, we've accomplished that training. Now that we've accomplished that training, and the dog has found odor all the way in the vehicle, the dog is understood now. I find odor anywhere and everywhere possible that odor can emanate from this vehicle, be it inside or outside. And they get that pretty quickly. So once again, how fast we move is based on the speed of learning of the dog. Now I will try to explain figure D with as simply that's loading the dam. This is where the dog moves down the side of the vehicle, but he's moved so quickly, even of the turn. He doesn't make the turn to the left. A lot of dogs will automatically because you've already done speed drill. You have the dog down, but now we're dealing with a solid wall. Also, already done by this point. They've done building. They probably already understand buildings or even inside. But in this case, it's a new environment and even people to turn on something that is open. We want nice turn, going 25 dogs left to right, turning the body to the right, bringing the leash around, nice with more encouragement verbally. The dog or pull the dog. I'm going to encourage the dog to make a nice turn. This is where the obedience comes in because the dog is used to. I turn all right. When I'm out doing obedience, I'm training the dog to turn to it. I'm turning in a circle. I'm turning in a right circle and a left circle. I'm doing a bout turn. So now the dog is used to turning with it. So I'll make that nice, weak, quiet turn and bring the dog nose right back into the left rear. And now we'll all another straight circle down the back side of the car. Now the dog working pretty quick. The little fast 5 dog close that. I make that nice turn again. And now I'm going nice, comfortably down the other side. I make sure that, and I'm doing this verbally encouraging and make that turn. And sometimes when the first dog first starts blowing, I give my search command to begin with, and I let the dog search. But now it may require, as I turn and put him back on target, at first to make him understand we're still searching, be that command, and then let it search. Hopefully he won't blow the turns. I've seen some dogs, they just blow the turns all the darn time. Most of the time, the small dog, they're supposed to come around this vehicle, and they're going to start doing it. So, go back to slide C. That is simply reverse the pattern. I always reverse the pattern. To go through that vehicle, around that vehicle, go into my search area in a reverse way so that they can work those wind currents and air patterns, air flows in the opposite direction to give my dog the best possible chance to locate odor and then go to the source of the odor. Everybody's still with me and everybody's okay, but from this point, we're going to go to the next slide. Well, actually, we go back one to detailing K-19 movement detailing. Back one there, Paul. K-19 movement when necessary. Now we accomplished that the dog knows that he needs to search the entire vehicle. When necessary, a third or detailed pass around the vehicle may be conducted. I conducted my first search around the vehicle, then I reversed it and come back all the way around the vehicle, and I saw something the dog did, something that maybe it's something else that occurred in the environment that made me feel like another pass was necessary. Usually it's based on the dog. Sometimes it can be based on other extenuating circumstances, something you observe. But the pass is okay and maybe conducted. This pass is called a detail search. This is where you slow the dog down. This is the old style where we stay in front of the dog and the dog moves. That's the old style. You should away from it. If you're doing it, keep in mind, any way you've been searching with your dog, if you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, don't stop now. If you're successful, you want to keep it up until which time you're working a newer dog or a young enough dog that you want to change, that you can change over to a little more a different method of searching vehicles that you may find that I think if you practice this stuff, you're going to find is very adequate. So on the third detailed pass, we simply taken our dog back around the vehicle one more time. We're still next to our dog. We're not in front of the dog. We're not blocking the dog. We want the dog to work for him. We're going to direct the search a little more by making sure we use directional if we have to make sure they search very much closer to the vehicle, searching those cracks and crevices and things that we need to cover a little more closely. Maybe the odor, maybe there was a problem with airflow, maybe it's a very small amount of odor, maybe the odor is contained in a way that very little odor is escaping, and now we want to make sure we get a closer check of the target vehicle. So still, don't block your dog. And don't move backwards. Get away from moving backwards. Not only is it hazardous and dangerous, a lot of bump heads and cracked skulls, you are impeding your dog's progress. You also are making yourself an unnecessary part of the scent picture. So stay out there on the side of your dog. Use your length, your arm length, etc. Some of us are taller than others. I know it's easier for some of us than others, but use your length and your direct. Don't point. Once again, we've learned long ago, don't point at where we want them to search, but you can use a general wave of your hand to get them to cover a little area. Maybe it's a 3-foot area. You'll let him cover so he makes sure he covers where the doors come together, etc., or where the trunk meets the bumper area, things of that nature. So use general ways for directional purposes. Don't point. Use your length, and then complete that final third search of the exterior. So most of these searches will not take the average search of the vehicle. Do not exceed 1 minute. Most of them will take 30 seconds to go around. Once, twice, you're done. Depending on your abilities, your physical ability, and the dog's physical ability and his speed, and the speed that you guys work with. So most of the exterior searches should not take more than 1 to 1.5 minutes. That's a lot of time to search a vehicle. A complete search, we're going to talk about interior searches in a minute, but a complete search of the vehicle to include interior searches should not really exceed 3 or 4 minutes. Folks, if you are spending 10 minutes on a vehicle, you are overworking that dog and overworking that target area. You're going to just wear your dog slam out, and he's already told you what you're going to do also. If you don't make sure your leash skills are strong, you dog there's that leash. You want to be able to like dog buttons. You want to be able to switch hands that leash if necessary without pulling the leash. Making sure that the dog keeping that nice shoe in the lead, but you don't really want to get lead in your feet and do a lot of stopping every time the dog gives any kind of behavior, because the dog's going to start reading you. And, this must be it. I'll go ahead and sit. Well, it might not even be on that vehicle. It might be several yards away. So you want to make sure that you're letting the dog work freely independently, even though he's on a leash. Make sure you're like 10 steps. Okay, I'm kind of waiting on you. You obviously want me to search this thing. It's obviously here. I'm just going to take it in my tool. So now, and there's nothing on the vehicle. My guys will tell you that I have watched them from afar. They don't even know it on a live search on the field and caught them. And listen, my guys are good. I love them. I give them the credit of the world. But I have in the early stages, they just so confident the narcotics are on that vehicle. You know, we catch ourselves going around that vehicle 5 or 6 times, and here comes Greg pulling up, getting on your butt. You know, after you've completed, I'll stay out, and once you come out and say, well, you just talked your dog into something, you know, oh yeah, well, it wasn't there. Well, that's why, because we talked our dog into something. So anyway, be careful of that kind of thing. Moving on now to, okay.
Or answer some questions. I got to get you back up.
Okay. We can go on some questions and then we can move forward a little bit. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just don't have a screen right now, so if anybody has questions, they can go ahead and submit them.
Yeah, go ahead and submit all the questions you want. We can discuss. I'm going to go into some other things that may answer some questions, but I'll be glad to take some of those questions and do the best I can to answer. That's what I am here for. You do what you got to do and let me know when you're ready. What I have a weird looking screen up again on my computer, so I don't know if I should have that up or not. But
yeah, you should.
Okay. All of you know that I'm not. All of you know that I'm not. Me and technology don't get along really, really well. So hang in there with me. I'm like really old and old school. So bear with me. That's why I got Paul and my wife and other people that keep me in line. Everybody that knows me knows that if it weren't for my wife, I would be lost and wandering and homeless and other things of that nature. I will. Can you want me to continue and cover a couple little things while you're waiting? Or
Yeah, you can.
okay.
Hey, you've got a couple of questions over here on the side.
Okay.
This is from Facebook, and at Jensen writes, do you ever send a dog out off leash searching? My dog goes down. Okay. Does it down for a final response, so I feel the need to keep him on leash.
Yeah, that I was coming to that. I'm glad it's a good. That's a good time for the question. Good timing. Yes. So once I have established this point in my training, where I'm on lead and I've learned the dance, my dog and I are working sufficiently and accomplished patterning the vehicle, and I've worked a lot of vehicles now. I've worked them until the dog has got it and I've got it. So now we're working sufficiently as a team. We're being successful with these searches. Now what I'm going to do is I can begin doing the same searches off lead. I start the same way. I start the same positions. I send my dog and I let them search. Later, and that is actually the next part of my program, getting into off-lead searches, and interior and off-lead searches are next. So I can explain more when we get into those phases. But yeah, so I've worked multiple vehicles, multiple single cars and vehicles, and now I'm ready to go to multiple car lineups. And once I enter lineups, I'm going to start working my dog off lead. I'm going to work my dog off lead on single cars first, like we've been doing on Odor. Once I've worked a significant amount of several cars, or however many cars I think necessary, where we're off lead, start with the single target, as always, and then work to a double vehicle, then a third vehicle, etc., off lead. And I'm moving the same way as if I was on lead, but I'm moving with the dog. Later, down the road, I'm going to start a position on that field if it's a safe environment to do so. Because anytime you go off lead, number one, you have to make sure it's a safe environment. Number two, the interior vehicle searches I conduct off lead. But I'm going to make sure I close that door behind my dog, and I keep my dog in a safe position. And when I bring that dog out of the car, I get it hooked up before the lead. I'm in a safe environment, like a safe closed parking area. I don't have traffic issues or other hazardous issues where the dog can get hurt or killed. So those are the paramount things. But yes, I'm going to work the dogs off lead. And also, we're going to get to lineups here in a minute, multiple vehicles, etc. And then, of course, later, I'm going to, if I'm in a big area, like I'm in a tow yard that I have to search, or in a large parking area, and it's a safe area to do so, I will pick a particular place downwind, and I'll send that dog, let him basically do an outside pattern, but they will search those vehicles. And you'll see by then that your dog is patterning those vehicles by themselves, running those patterns on themselves. But we're going to give the dog a chance to cover a multitude of vehicles without searching.
So, a couple other quick questions. At what age do you begin vehicle searches? Or at what point in your training did you begin vehicle searches?
The point of my training really isn't age related, because age related is where I started to begin with. My puppy training goes a long time before, probably longer than most of everybody here knows, before I actually put them on Odor. Because I want to, going back to what I said earlier, I want to establish a strong Odor. I'm a sound believer that a lot of us start too soon, sooner than either the dog's ready or we're ready to put the dog on Odor. For instance, if you start a young puppy on Odor and you can't control every environment, and that dog isn't completely sound, he's comfortable in every environment, where you've also added noises and every kind of distractions. Because don't forget, going back to the speed drills and the target drills, as they get sound on those things, we're going to include our proofing agents. We're going to start putting proofing agents, and not only using blanks, we're going to start proofing off of non-target odor items. And we're going to start adding distractors to include noise and sound and other things. And the same thing in obedience. I've done that in obedience. So I always do that in obedience as well. I'm going to start adding my distractors and these noises and other things in obedience so that it is not a problem for the dog to work through those things. And I believe those things take longer. And always, it depends on the dog. But even with a good fast dog, you'd be surprised what you might run into. You take a nice young puppy and you first working odor, and you've got your odor right there in what you think's a nice, serene, clean field, and a tree branch breaks and falls down and lands on a piece of metal somewhere in outside your house, if that's where you're training or something of that nature, and makes this loud noise and frightens your dog. Right when the dog was going into odor, you've created a negative in your training environment, and a negative association to odor that you've got to now overcome. For some dogs, it may be no big issue. It may take simply, well, let's do it again. Other dogs, you may create a problem that you just weren't ready for. And I'd rather encompass any problems like that before I'm in odor. It's much more difficult when I'm got that dog on odor, if that makes any sense to you.
So another question that's been submitted in detailing, and the dog is between the handler and the car. Is the leash still in the hand farthest from the car, and the paint brushing with the left hand?
Okay, so that and you'll see one of my handlers in the pictures here. I think and this is one of this dog's like a machine, and the handler's done an outstanding job with this dog. Dog name is Briggs. Handler, and the handler works at Gulf County Sheriff's Office. And you can see Briggs working, and now he's reversed and he's coming back the other way. And the leash started out in the handler's right hand and is still in the handler's right hand. And actually, he does employ and was taught that when I'm coming back down the other way, that the leash switches hands. So I keep the leash in my right hand, and I'm using my left hand if necessary. But oftentimes I will switch hands. It really doesn't, it's not that important. It's not something to get too tied up on, as long as you're doing the dance and you're keeping a good U in the lead. As you see in the pictures here, the handler is incorporating a nice U in the lead. The dog is fast, and the handler, not so much to begin with, but he's speeded up, and the dog come to him. And you'll find that over training with good dogs and during your training, the dogs learn us to the point they start to come back to it. Especially like me, I've gotten older. My dog is super fast and has learned to slow down for me. The dog has learned that he ain't quite as fast anymore, and we have developed a super comfortable speed with each other, and the dog really working with me. But I started out trying to help her and trying to keep up with her the best I could, but yet slow her down a little bit so that we could accomplish the mission, search the area properly, but also the way at a speed comfortable to the dog, so that I wouldn't do anything to deter the dog. But in these pictures, you can see the dog. The handler started the dog on that left front bumper and is working comfortably down the side. And as he come around the vehicle, he's reversed his pattern. The dog has shown interest in his button hook. This thing, I remember this picture. He actually switched hands with the lead, but as the dog got close to the odor, he switched the hand back to the right hand, so he would not do anything to create a tight lead. That's important to do. You can even see here where the dog did his train final response, the lead still isn't tight. There is still enough looseness in the lead that he's not pulling the dog off or discouraging the final response. So that was a good job by the handler and a good job by the dog. If that helps at all.
That brings up another question. How much slack do you try to keep in the leash, such as the loop?
It's as much as I can with the J loop. Now keep in mind, I don't really want to be where my body's touching the dog. I'm going to be close to my dog, but I'm going to have about a foot or so, or even a little more of separation on the cert. We're going to start out kind of tight with the dog right next to my side. But once I start moving down the vehicle, I actually give my dog a little more room. But with the 6 foot lead, I can't give too much, right? I'm going to give him a couple foot or so. So I've got that J and that 6 foot lead. It's really hard to explain exactly how much use in there, but I think that you can understand it based on the length of the lead. Now, once I've established very good work of my own, and I'm going to, I teach my handlers, I make them drag blocks around and all kinds of other things before they even attach the dog. All kinds of fun games, maybe not so fun to them, but they really learn to keep that J in that lead. And then once again, if the area and circumstances allow, a 10-foot lead is permissible, as long as you are comfortable using a 10-foot lead. I see handlers that do things like they got other things in their hands. We want to get things out of our hands. The only thing in our hands should be that lead. When we're off lead, there shouldn't be anything else in your hand. And I see a lot of fumbling with the long lead. That's why I don't like longer leads than necessary, and 10 is plenty. So we can move on from that. I hope that helps.
One other question that came up: reward systems, treat versus toy.
You what?
Reward system, treat versus toy.
Correct. What's the question?
Well, I guess Carla is trying to figure out which one do you prefer and why.
Okay, number one, I'm not a big treat guy. I look for dogs that have the drive for play, tug, and retrieve. And I find that in the field, listen, there are super dogs that all they will accept is food. And who chooses the reward? The dog, correct? However, there's been a lot of people that I've worked with that have found that they thought that all their dog would do was accept food, and once they tried it, their dog went backwards crazy over the tug or the toy, because they would tell me that the dog likes both. Well, if the dog, that you'd be surprised. And also, you'll find that down the road, as a dog gets older, food starts to lose its value to the dog. The dog knows you're going to feed him. The dog knows he's going to get treats. So what drives the dog? That's the most important thing. Now, you can use food reward, very successful. The problem with food rewards also, a lot of times, you must be a handler that's on point. It's a slower reward system. Often it's very difficult to get the reward to the dog in a quickly, timely manner, and timing is everything. In letting the dog know they're right, and in rewarding the dog for proper responses. So as long as if you're on, I'm seeing handlers work wonderfully. Obviously, the dogs love it. Some people use them in conjunction. I'm just not big on food. Most of my dogs are chosen. The way I use and select my dog, almost none of them prefer food. Very rare do I have a dog. They're all about the toy and the tug and the play. They'll almost just ignore the food. They don't care. I can hold food out. They'd rather just go to her and play with me. But food can be employed, yes, and it really the same principles apply. It's just you got to be Johnny on the spot and get the rewards to the dog quickly, and don't spill the food everywhere, causing problems for other dogs or contaminating the area. I hope that was helpful.
Okay.
So we can move to the next slide if we're caught up with questions, because we're getting long, and I won't want to keep because now we've established how to train them. But on slide number 12, you'll see another dog handler team, another fine handler and a fine dog. This is one of my dog teams. He works for Port St. Joe Police Department, and he is working down the side. He started at the other side of the vehicle, and in this particular instance, the wind was blowing the opposite way. Blowing into the passenger side and out the driver's side. So he started on the rear right bumper of the vehicle, and you can see that the dog working down the vehicle on his left side. And this dog, this can be done on or off lead, and the search will look the same. Once you start working fully off lead and letting your dog roam from you, that's fine. That's okay. But in your first search is on lead, off lead, you're going to keep the dog in close to you. In this case, you'll also see the J in the lead. And another example, and this is where the odor is high. It's in the mirror. and you can see how well the dog put his nose on the mirror. And right after this, the dog went to his trained vital spots, which on this dog is a sit. We can move to the next slide. Okay, so real quickly, we'll cover interior search. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to pattern the vehicle. So I'm going to begin my search once again at the location, the front bumper, like I'm searching the exterior. I'm going to bring down the dog. We're going to get just past. And what I'm going to do is there's going to be an odor that the dog's going to pick up on, but I'm going to quickly open the door, set my dog right there where the X is, just outside where the door opening is. And my first odor when I tell the dog search and I indicate him to go into the vehicle, the odor is going to be right there between the driver's seat and the door, in that space there. And then I'm always going to have another vehicle set up where I start again on the end it's inside the door. You want to make sure you pound in that dog's mind that it could be to the left of me in the door, not necessarily penetrating the vehicle. Once I penetrate the vehicle, my next odor and pattern and training pattern, and once again, these vehicles, I'm going to use multiple vehicles on this, and this is going to be taught as soon as my exterior search is sound. So I'm going to pattern the vehicle next with an odor somewhere up under the driver's dash, up under the driver's dash area, then the middle of the dash area, then the passenger side area, under the dash area and the footing area, and then over on the other side between the passenger door and the vehicle and the seat. One question I got was my views on dogs jumping in cars. I'll answer that real quickly and then move on with interior. It's fine as long as the dog does it on his own accord. When you're searching a vehicle, you don't touch the vehicle, you don't tap the vehicle, you don't put your hands and body on the vehicle, you search the vehicle as found in the field. We're still talking training here. So now we can, once I'm set up on exterior searches, I will start changing that environment. I start with all my windows rolled up on all the vehicles, and then eventually I'm going to roll them down. If my dog jumps through the window, that's no problem. He did it on his own. I did not tell him to jump the vehicle. That's fine. The search continues. You're okay. If you indicate for your dog to jump in the vehicle, he does, you now violated their right. You've penetrated the vehicle without a warrant, without authority to do so. So quickly moving on. So in pattern the vehicle, you can see the arrows. The next one, I'm going to make sure I have an odor in the seat, in the driver's seat, and etc. So then you will, then I'm going to have the dog cross over. My next odor is going to be behind the driver's seat, then in the passenger rear seat, then the middle area of the back seat, then the far area, and then the area behind the passenger seat, and then coming back out across the front seat and out the front door, which you came. You'll see this on slide number 14. Going to slide 14. Well, before you do, you can see the trunk area. I'm going to now open the trunk and teach the dog to do an interior search of the trunk. There's where I let the dog hop into the trunk and he searches bodily inside the trunk. Most of the time we won't ever have to do that, but sometime we will if we're looking for a small enough odor and we're searching where maybe a body used to be, and they want you to go ahead and they thinking a drop of blood or two may be in there. Oftentimes it's just a search of the exterior of the vehicle. Go to slide 14, please. There you can see the pattern I'm using. When I'm setting up, once I've set up and the dog has learned that he finds odor in all those areas that I just showed you inside the vehicle, now we're going back to using multiple vehicles over a period of time. But you can see the pattern that we just taught. There are multiple patterns you can go to. This is one pattern I prefer because it's quick, fast, and it's natural to the dog. Dog goes in, he covers that interior area, crosses over the seat like in an X pattern. He ends up in the back seat, making that sweep around to the far side of the back seat, and then coming back out through the middle again and out the front door. Always allow the dog, when you do a search of the interior of a vehicle and you think you're done, go to the other side of the vehicle and open the rear door. or the front door too can be used, and let him complete it in a reverse pattern. Either oftentimes I do it by opening the passenger door, close the front door, open the passenger door, and I just do that same pattern right there in reverse. So always give him a second sniff of the interior. Then you're finished. If you don't get anything, trust the dog. Once you're comfortable searching the vehicles, and the dog is handling all this thing on lead, and you're working these single wheels off lead, now you work to multiple vehicle lineups. I start out with 2 vehicles and then 3 vehicles. All the vehicles are hot, so you don't park them too close together. Then I'll use the wind blowing like from the front to the back, or back to the front. So I don't have odor coming from their vehicles, and I'll search the vehicle and all the vehicles are hot. Then I start introducing blank areas and even more vehicles. So I start with 2 vehicles. 1 vehicle is blank. The second vehicle is hot. When I go to 3 vehicles, I may go hot, blank, hot, ending on the hot again. 4 vehicles, blank, hot, blank, hot. I ended on the hot and introduced multiple blanks. Then 4 vehicles, hot, blank, blank, hot. Now I've introduced more blanks in a row than just 1, but still ended on a positive note, hot. Then I moved to 5 vehicles and 6 vehicles and a similar type thing. Now, if that's understandable to everybody, you may have to look at that a little more. But if you have any questions, please ask. But we'll move on to point-to-point search now. Next slide.
Quick question. Do you need a reason to pop the trunk?
Do I need a reason? Yes. Yes, unless the cops have already popped it for you. If they have a warrant, no. You can search wherever they tell you to search. Okay? When you do vehicle searches, in real search, outside of training now we're doing live search, and you go to work for law enforcement agency or the FBI or whoever it is that brought you to do this search, advise them, one, of you and your dog's capability. Advise them that, because they may not know, but if even caught dog handlers may not know, alert and file responsible is not probable cause. It is, however, for a narcotic dog with the cops using. You're using an HRD dog, your dog alerts. That doesn't give you probable cause to go in that vehicle. So you need to explain them so they understand that your dog will not get an alert final response by your dog would not be sufficient to give them probable cause to search. Hopefully they already have a warrant. Hopefully they brought you there. They may have brought you there to help establish probable cause, to give them more information to get probable cause. So you do an exterior of the search of the car. If they ask you to do it, if you tell them that, they say, oh, we don't want to search yet, that's fine. Don't search. If there's a reason you may see necessary, and you can always refuse to search, it's your dog team. But there should be no reason you shouldn't, as long as you work closely with them and they know the parameters that your dog is working under as well as you do. Most of them will be educated on these things, but some cops are not. Just like you may not be educated on what their dog's capabilities allow them to do. So if they bring you to the area and you search the vehicle, now if they have a warrant, they can pop that trunk. They can search outside and inside. If you search around the exterior of the car and give a final response, they may not have a warrant. They may use that to help them get it. That may be something that gives them more reason to get it. So it's a big difference between HR and narcotics. Narcotics dog, their dog gives a final response on the car, they're searching the car. It's probable cause. They don't need a warrant. It's a warrantless search. Your dog, reasonable suspicion only. It gives you reasonable suspicion only, and it helps them establish probable cause if that's what they want to use your dog for. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, one of the, let me interject. One of the things that I've even seen with some of our narcotics handlers out there, if their dog, if they're looking specifically for a shipment, or they've got a tip or something of that nature, even a lot of times our narcotics handlers would go ahead and they'd work the dog, but if the dog gave a trained final response on the vehicle, they would go ahead and secure a warrant before taking that vehicle apart.
Correct.
And
That is
that's
correct.
just to, again, to help dot those I's and cross the T's.
That's right.
And
That depends on the situation of the search, but oftentimes before they will want to get a warrant in order to process that vehicle fully.
exactly.
And they may use your dog again to search the interior as part of that processing thing, or they may just say, "Hey, we're going to cover all the doctor." It depends on the environment, the situation that agency is working under. Who knows who you're working with? Might be the end. Who knows what kind of case you're in. And,
exactly.
So those things are definitely things to understand and make sure you understand and you have a right that you must tell what you are. And so one thing I wanted to make sure, Jason brought up a good point, and I did bring that up earlier. It's a sniff, but that is a search of a vehicle, whether it be your dog or their dog. It's not a search. It's a sniff of this vehicle. It's a sniff of a target. It's a canine sniff, not a search. We always talk about vehicle search, is what we call it in the industry. But in actuality, legally speaking, it's a canine sniff of the exterior of a vehicle, or a canine sniff of the interior of a building, et cetera, et cetera. Your dog is not doing a search. Once now, what they take that dog in and they've gotten a warrant and they say we're search, it doesn't matter. Your dog's still doing a sniff. And once again, also remember, your dog does not find bodies. Your dog does not find, the police dogs don't find drugs. They find the odor of that target that they've been trained to find. So those things are important to remember. And make sure you share these things with the officers, and they will communicate all of this. And if there's any doubt in your mind, back up. If your dog's not capable of doing it, if this isn't what you should be doing, be honest with them and let them know. Let me help you find someone else. So once again, your dog is a tool to be used in this whole thing to collect the evidence, is what we're trying to get to, which is your target odor, or hopefully it will lead you to the actual stuff. But your dog is trained to find, obviously, the odor of that target. So any other questions we need to do now before I move on? I'm almost finished here, and then we can open up to even more questions. I don't want to run anybody too long late, and it was just kind of important to cover A to Z when you come to vehicle searches. If you get the vehicle searches and you haven't really covered all your bases and your dog is sound, then you're going to end up with a dog with problems. So the next thing I want to talk about real quickly is point-to-point search. And the point-to-point search is just simply a point A to B search. So here you have a parking lot area, and you have the vehicles parked in this manner. Your wind blowing from the vehicles to the back, or et cetera, but from left to right. So I go to the back side of the vehicles, or the downwind side. I go several yards behind the vehicle, and I do a straight line search A to B. Why? Because the odor may be on your center vehicle, or it may be on the last vehicle, and I can do this quick search and to get the opportunity for the dog to get into a scent cone to take me to the hot vehicle and save especially if I've got a lot of work to do, this may save my dog from having to overwork the dog, working too much, when I can just do it in this manner and cover it more quickly. Now, if I think for some reason, because of the search or what law enforcement wants, I may run this search as part of my search, and that's what I would do, and do a individual vehicle search after that. So you can, whatever the circumstances call for. Moving on to the next slide, please. So here, another lineup, and this is the left to right from vehicle 1 to 4. Where would you start? A lot of people would start at the downwind side. That is wrong. It's never wrong to start on the downwind side. However, one of the theories that has been developed over a long time and we use often is in this situation, if I'm going to, I may do a point-to-point search behind vehicle 4, up in a straight line, up from down below up to the top of this situation, and give my dog a chance to enter a scent cone. But he still may go to one car and get confused because the odor may be on vehicle number 1. If I start, or number 2, if I start at vehicle number 4, I may encounter a lot of behavior changes and even get a final response where the odor is accumulated so much, I have so much strong pool odor under vehicle 3, for instance, that it's actually on vehicle 2 and flowing that way. So starting on vehicle 1 in this situation may give you an advantage so that your dog is working clean area. If that car is blank, he hasn't been confused by the next vehicle, because I give my dog a chance I eliminate the chance of confusing my dog and getting into pool odor or a strong odor coming from another vehicle and I just work too many blanks. So that pretty much brings us some points to remember on the last slide.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
If you search multiple vehicles from downwind, how does that work on leash?
I'm going to work it just like I would. I'm going to work individual vehicles one at a time on lead. Work on lead and working, doing the same thing I always do. Working one direction, moving on to the next vehicle. Working one, reversing. That's why you have an advantage there, especially if you're on lead. If the wind is blowing across those 4 vehicles, starting in vehicle 1 rather than the downwind side of vehicle 4. I'm on lead. Now, my dog is very good at this, and we worked off lead individual vehicles and multiple cars. I may start on this search, I may start in an area downwind several yards away from vehicle 4 and let them work up from the bottom to the top, and they may, I'm doing a quartering search, and then you'll see your dog go in, he'll start checking each one of those vehicles on their own. So if it's not required to be on leash, I would start at vehicle 1 in this situation and work to vehicle 4. If I'm going to work down for some reason, I'm on leash, but an off leash search may be more feasible, so long as it's a safe environment to do so.
Okay. Points to remember.
So remembering that one of these are more difficult phases for the dog is vehicle examination. It's very strenuous for them, especially in hot climates. Keep that in mind. Especially when you're working on the inside of a car and you're going to close your dog in there. We have to be careful how long we're going to leave a dog in there. Make sure when you're training this stuff, you take all these kind of points and weather conditions into consideration. Incorporate the variable airflow patterns into your training. So upward air current, downward air current, vertical air currents, horizontal crosswind air currents, swirling systems. Take in mind inside the vehicle with air conditioning system and fans blowing windows and doors. Just like anything, you want to train in all these scenarios. And to make sure you incorporate your proofing and distractors. Remember that a lot of your proofing and distractor agents are already in the car. They're present when you're searching, especially anytime you go and get these cars from somebody, they're going to probably have food or other items people left in there. All of those are proofing items that we could have left in there ourselves. If you have a perfectly clean car, put it in yourself. If you don't, make sure you record what's already present. Maybe other dog food and other things may be present. Make sure you use a multi-food variety of vehicles to include cars and trucks, buses, semi-trucks, boats, and aircraft, if you can get them. The boat searches and semi-truck searches and bus searches are very important to make sure you work your dog through. Allow dead scent, residual odor dissipate before using your vehicles again. So if you're like, I only have so many vehicles to work with, so you're going to work with these 6 this week and let somebody clean them and let them sit and use them on down the road again, so that you're working as little residual odor as possible. Keeping in mind that you may get behavior changes on dead scent areas. Train with your doors and windows closed in order to trap the odor. And later, start emphasizing realistic searches. Change it up. Open a door, crack a window, things of that nature. Remember, in real life, we search it the way we find it. In real searches, we search it the way we find it. Utilize all the cracks, holes, openings, etc. in the vehicle surface and interior as well. Anywhere where odor may emanate from, make sure that you cover that as I indicated with the arrows. When performing a sniff of the exterior vehicle, one pass completely around should be conducted, then reverse the direction should be employed, and a complete pass around the vehicle should be made in the opposite direction. Or if and searches more than 5 minutes maximum. 4 to 5 minutes to search an entire vehicle. That'd be a long time. Detailing searches, we covered that. Allow that dog to work quickly. Don't impede the dog. Don't pinch the dog in. Stay along the side of the dog. Use your length and showing areas to search. And never forget, keep it positive, please. It's all got to be happy, happy. Extend the reward. Pay that dog when they're successful. And I hope that this presentation has been successful for you from a standpoint that will help you be more successful going down the road in your searching. Remember that if you are already got a dog that knows this particular method, and this method I've been using for 3 years, you don't feel obligated to go out there and try to change your method if you're successful. But as you're moving forward, and if it is something that can help your dog, or as you get into a young dog and a new dog, I hope you would consider using some of these methods. And at any time I can be helpful, and I'll be glad to take more questions, but any time I can help anyone, I have a phone number, I'm accessible. Give me a time to get back to you, and I'd be glad to help anybody anytime. That's what I'm here for. I'm not trying to keep any secrets. I'm here to share what I know. Some people say, quit giving away the whole bus. Well, that's what I'm here to do, give you the information. And I hope this was on this app. Wish I had more time to get into buses and aircraft. To touch on that real quickly, on a bus, enter the bus from the driver. Don't make sure you do your exterior search. Then upon entering the inside of a bus, going up the stairs, make sure you put those odors in that front compartment and allow that dog to cover. A lot of times they will quickly go up the stairs. Don't crowd them in, because otherwise you're going to force them down back toward the back of the bus. That's okay. Let them continue to go all the way down the back, and then then allow them to start doing a little more detailed search coming back across seat to seat to seat. It doesn't necessarily have to be every seat. It depends on what you're looking for and what we think. And then moving forward, make sure they're covering the driver's area, etc. Same with aircraft. You're going to pick a nice pattern. I think you can understand now how to start patterning these things in your training, and also when you're in real life areas. So I certainly hope that everybody was satisfied with that presentation, and it was helpful in some manner and way to you and your future dog working and training. And most importantly, be safe out there. Take care of you and your partner.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, we're going back in time. Actually, I just did not get October change for Brad. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you, especially Greg. I know we've answered a lot of questions during the presentation. So if you do have any questions going forward, please feel free to shoot me an email at psmartin@hrdspecializedk9.com. And if it's for Greg or Lisa or any of our past guests that we have had on here, please feel free to reach out. I hope that everyone has a great night. Stay safe, and we will see you in a month. Thank you. Thank you again, everyone. Greg.
Thank you. Be safe, Paul. Be safe, everybody. And like I said, just be safe out there, guys. It's getting crazy out there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.